today's going to be a sports day. A lot went on this past weekend. If you start with it and you watch the football games, not so much the college games. I think I'm going to do a little quick and dirty on the bowls. Maybe pull up a printout of the bowl games so that maybe if we were running a little betting site, me and you, we could mark off who we thought would win and how that would go. Yeah, sort of like the brackets in the, basketball tourney. But a lot of crazy crap going on this week in football. I think it was the Thursday night game. You had the Rams against the Eagles. And the Eagles dominated. They scored something like 17 points in the third. And then scored nothing in the fourth. And still squeaked out a win. With some missed field goals and some interceptions. And for a moment there, with Wentz out, Foley looked like the rock star that he looked like last year. They were just commanding the game. I mean, handily beating LA everywhere. And then they disappeared. Defense disappeared. LA came back, of course. LA's probably one of the most dominant teams this season. And they look good. So, ultimately they lost, though. Yeah, strange game. But exciting nonetheless. Poor Cam. My sorrows and the ongoing tragedy of Cam Newton. And nobody can tell. And dude, it's so weird. Nobody's saying anything. His interviews, I don't know what's wrong with my shoulder. Can't throw more than 20 yards. It hurts. There's fatigue. There's pain. Maybe it could be a torn rotator cuff. Maybe it could be tendon or inflammation. Maybe. Yeah, they probably should sit him. They're done. They lost this last game, which was horrible. After he was trash talking and shit, because that's all he does. He talks a huge fucking game, and for the last whatever seasons, hasn't backed anything up, which means he's a fighter, but he's a bitch. Because real fighters, they don't talk. They show up. They produce. They're not just neighborhood punks. That's what he comes across like, the big neighborhood bully. And I don't know why. Dude, this is not new technology. I told you. Why isn't he going to Bahamas or Colombia or somewhere in Southern California or Arizona, wherever these clinics are where they inject stem cells? He should have no problems with his shoulder. But again, not the smartest guy, not an innovator, not a leader. Probably sits back there and is more worried about visiting his tailor to get his new hat and new suit for the week, as opposed to commanding the team, leading the team, fixing his shoulder. So weird. And I mean, that's not how LeBron rolls. LeBron rolls at the top. And Jordan and Tiger and Peyton and Drew and, Carson and all these guys, man. I don't know. I don't know what happened to that kid. Well, I sort of do. I think he had a single parent and he was raised tough, and I don't know the Cam Newton story. I don't really care. I sort of remember some of it. But man, what a prototype gladiator to have such a fizzle of a career. And people, will say it's the team or whatever, Rivera, right, the coach. He's had the opportunities, man. He is not a leader, and he's not a strong character. He's a whiner. It's the weirdest thing. He has everything but the mind of a champion. And if you don't have the mind of a champion, yeah, you'll never be a champion. And he might get lucky, and things might come together, and he'll have a championship season. And maybe, you want to have some retribution. If you ever watch 30 for 30, which they just did Thurman Thomas on, and Thurman reminds me of Cam Newton. Talks a lot of shit. A kid from Texas that just didn't get respect. Everywhere he went, he felt he had to earn it. And then when he was at the prime of his career, it was Emmett and Barry. Those are number 1 and number 2, the greatest rushers. While Thurman has gone to 3 and then 4 straight Super Bowls. And he was never considered the greatest rusher in his time. Weird. And when he was at, where'd he go, Oklahoma? Or whatever, with Barry? Barry was on the second string-ish. He was at the end of Thurman's collegiate career. And Thurman was the primary back. Barry was younger, but he wasn't getting the carries. And Thurman was setting every record at that school. I don't know, not Oklahoma, wherever the hell he went. And Barry shows the respect for him. When you sit them down and they talk together, which they did at 30 for 30. A great 30 for 30 in what's become sort of lackluster. And then a follow-up 30 for 30 showed up, and it was the Nigerian Nightmare. And that one aired in 2013. And I thought, you guys did the Nigerian Nightmare in 2013, and you waited till 2018 to do Thurman Thomas, one of the best backs in history? Buffalo gets no fucking respect. I think they probably did Jim Kelly a while back. And Jim's been through hell. Yee. But the Nigerian Nightmare came from adversity in a tough environment. Came over here, never touched a football. Okay, and he was good and all, but Thurman Thomas? Another level, another few levels. Yeah, weird. So I watched that. Buffalo won. They squeaked out a 14-13 win. Weird. New England looked terrible. I mean, there's all kinds of weird talk right now. Gronkowski looked terrible. They lost to the Fish 2 weeks ago, and then miracle play, and now they lost this week on Monday night or wherever they won. Lost Sunday night. Whatever. And Brady threw for an interception. He just lobbed one down the field, and it was picked off. He threw it toward Gronk, it looked like. Very uncharacteristic plays of New England. I think it's the first time since early 2000s where they lost 2 games back-to-back in December. So maybe the end of the dynasty, which is good. Time's up. You know, I think New England and Pittsburgh, if you go back 14 years, those two have been in a Super Bowl 13 of the last 14. Get the fuck out of here. Dude. So, yeah, time for some new blood. LA. We'll get Drew back in there. Maybe the Eagles come back around. Let's hope. But strange games. A lot of weird games. A lot of weird football. McVay, for a young dude, he looks solid. I mean, those guys look tough out west. So, it's going to be an exciting playoff, and everybody knows when the playoff comes around, whole new season. The injuries, the fresh start, single elimination. It's a different world, man. So that's exciting. And the bowl games should be pretty exciting. I think college football's been pretty good this year. So both of those look pretty exciting, and this was a pretty exciting weekend for some football. A lot of upsets, some weird stuff going on. And I think, again, because New England lost, there's still only 2 clinches for playoff berths. You know, the wild card and the Kansas City and New England, maybe. Or no, New England's 3rd. Yeah, KC looks tough. Woo. So we'll have to see. But attendance is down. I think they're fine. Did you see the new stadium they're building out in California next to the Coliseum? Just like Jerry Jones, it's $1 billion stadium. Out near the airport, they had to dig 100 feet below the surface so that the top of the stadium still fell within the requirements of the airspace next to the airport. 100 feet down they dug. That's what, 6, 8 stories? 11 foot a story? 9 stories? So you're going way underground. Oh. and it looks futuristic. It's sort of like some kind of weird teardroppy design. It might be, I don't know. And I think the Rams are going to play there, and the Chargers. And it's next to the little round Coliseum, right? From the games, the Olympic Games. That thing's been around a while, and you're like, oh my God. But yeah, billion in the billions. So it doesn't seem to me that football's hurting anywhere, regardless of what you say with kneeling and hashtags and lowered attendance or whatever. Those guys are multi-billionaires. It's disgusting how much money's out there. But the players seem to be making a lot of money. The contracts seem to be huge. So when you put your body on the line, they seem like they're getting paid, just like in basketball. Not so much in hockey, a little bit. Pretty much in baseball. Tennis, golf, MMA. Some MMA, whatever. So, yeah, onward for football. Getting close. End of the season, huh? Playoff time. Are you ready for some football? MMA was pretty exciting this weekend, too. Oh, and I want to start off. I watched Bellator on Paramount. I don't know when they went to Paramount. They have Josh Thompson, Chael Sonnen, and I don't recall who else is the Bellator commentator. And then they've got John McCarthy and Mike Goldberg, which I think I've noted that in the past. Mike Goldberg from Joe Rogan and Goldberg, UFC, went over to Bellator. Big John McCarthy reffed all the fights, 1,000 fights or whatever. Now he's the commentator. He's pretty lucid. He's pretty observant. He's well-spoken. It's okay. He's better than Frank Mir. Clearly better speaker. And then you got Josh Thompson and Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen doesn't stop speaking. Oh, just a chatterbox you've seen from his YouTubes and whatnot. And Josh Thompson, he's got a podcast out there. He's trying to do the same thing Brendan Schaub is doing, Below the Belt with Showtime. Rogan does with MMA, his MMA shows. But not the same caliber, not as well spoken. Pretty decent. But the whole thing, it was a fight for, I think it was in, I don't know where it was. It wasn't in Milwaukee. Fight night at UFC was in Milwaukee. It was in Hawaii. And they had 2 fights in a row. They had a fight night, and then they had the Bellator Championship for a Hawaiian gal. I think it was called Bellator 212. Her name was Lima Lay McFarlane. And I guess she won. I did not watch the Saturday night Bellator fights because they had UFC Fight Night that night, which was not bad at all. Whew, Kevin Lee against Al Iaquinta. Talk about a fucking barn burner. Whoa. Get into it in a minute. But I didn't watch the Bellator 212 fights or Bellator 213 fights for this Lima Lay McFarlane. She's a local native Hawaiian, and she kicked ass. And some other folks fought, but I watched the previous night, Friday night's fights, and they had Frank Mir against Javi Ayala, and Javi Ayala, and Javi Ayala beat the tar out of Frank Mir. Frank Mir was 300 pounds less than a year ago. He dropped down to 250 for this fight. He looked great. Doesn't have a chin anymore, has to take you down, and then has to grapple you, has to submit you, which that's his realm anyway. But when you're in with the big boys, one shot to the jaw and it sort of lights you up. He got destroyed. He got his head beat off. He took Ayala down, tried to get some moves on him on top, but didn't work, and then he ultimately got knocked in the face and was put out quickly. Which is fine but sad. I'm sure he needs money, and I'm sure he fought for some cash there. I don't know where he is now. He is not commentating. At least I don't think he is. Not with Chael Sonnen, Josh Thompson, and then Goldberg and Big John McCarthy doing the talk on Bellator. Maybe he's somewhere else. But yeah, he got pummeled. And um, Michael Chandler beat Brent Primus. And Chandler's been around for a long time. Primus beat him, if you hadn't watched this fight, maybe a year ago, less than a year ago, maybe longer. Primus calf kicked him and knee kicked him, low leg kicked him a bunch of times, and Chandler's leg spasmed and sort of went numb. I've seen this multiple times now. If you don't do the low kicks into the meat of the inside or outside leg, the quad, and you do it into the knee or into the calf or low leg, even the shin, sometimes they catch a nerve and your leg spasms and then your foot no longer works. Chandler had this where he couldn't step. The foot was numb, was no longer responding, and would flop. They called the fight because this dude kicked his leg off. And it was pretty epic. I remember that. I watched that fight. Chandler clearly said, "This is a fluke. This is crap. I'm going to beat the crap out of Primus." Primus came in. It was a tough fight all around. These guys went 5 rounds. They beat each other's faces up. They had a lot of exchanges. They were up. They were down. There was a lot of striking. And Chandler won. He ultimately pulled this thing out from Primus. And he reclaimed the belt for the little guys. I think they're flyweight or lightweight or whatever below. Pretty exciting fight. Not bad. He dominated him pretty well. Beat him up, was pressing forward. Chandler did. So I think he got his comeuppance, which was good. Lyoto Machida came back. I don't think I stayed up to watch that fight. That was one of the Cove fights. He fought Rafael Carvalho, and I guess they had a split decision. And I sit back and I'm like, Machida's always been good. He's got longevity because of that karate style. He's got an epic, historic fight card history. I mean, who he's fought, who he's beat, the weight classes that he's been in, going up, going down. Some epic shockers, some solid fights, then some epic losses, right? Where he, Hua knocked his ass out, remember? Or maybe, I think so, not the other way around. Mauricio Shogun against Lyoto the Dragon. And great fight. Whew. But Lyoto's tough, but he's got a weathered career. He'll never be top again, but he hangs around in the top 5, 6, 7. Of course, he always will. He's wily. He's brilliant. His skills are unbelievable. His experience and training go deeper than most. So you got a great fighter there. And I don't know why. It was late. That damn thing was on again late. I didn't stay up and watch that. Or maybe that was the co-main on the Saturday night fight. I think that was. With the Hawaiian gal Machida fought too. Didn't see that against Carvalho. But I bet you that was an epic fight. But then the UFC fight in Milwaukee. Holy schmackle. You had Al Iaquinta against Kevin Lee. And Iaquinta beat Kevin Lee in Kevin Lee's first fight in the UFC years ago. Maybe 10 years ago. 2008, 2009. Kevin Lee was very green. Iaquinta took some shots, got ground and pound from him, but ultimately he got up and knocked him on his ass and beat him up, and I think he won by decision. Didn't choke him out, won by decision. Well, this was the rematch. And if you don't recall, a few months ago, Iaquinta went in and went 5 rounds with Khabib, the Eagle Nurmagomedov. 5 rounds on a week's notice. Because, I don't know who couldn't fight. Tony Ferguson, whoever. Connor, somebody wasn't gonna or couldn't fight in New York. So Iaquinta jumped in there with him. Khabib couldn't put him out. And I was like, that was a weird fluke. I've watched Iaquinta his whole career. He's a scrapper. This fight against Kevin Lee, his skill set, just like everybody else, you're either evolving and your skills are becoming deeper. Some of these guys stay stagnant, and they stay stagnant because of the team they're with, the comfort level they're at, their inability to challenge their training, or it's just where they want to be, and they think that they're good enough. Sort of like Cody Garbrandt, right? I think the only way Cody Garbrandt will ever get better is if he leaves Team Alpha Male. He never will. His skills are not going to increase. These cats all know now, the smart ones, that if you go to another camp with another top of the line global world-class coach for whatever discipline, you'll get better. And that's a two-way street. The coach has to see in you the attributes that will allow him to impart his knowledge and skills and training on you, and that you're going to be able to digest, learn, and then regurgitate and practice those skill sets. And coaches can see that. Great coaches can see that quickly. Like if you're doing, if you're going to Colorado, or you're going out to California, or coming down here to Hollywood, or you're going to New Mexico, wherever you're going, Jackson Wink or Ludwig, Dwayne Bang Ludwig, or wherever. If you go back to Iaquinta with, what's his name? Big black-haired guy in New York, right? With Chris and that whole team that's out of the, borough, they kill. And Matt Serra, the whole contingent. New York is scrappers. Dude, if you don't think those motherfuckers have attitude, every one of those guys thinks they're going to destroy you when they walk in. And Iaquinta's skill set has escalated and increased tremendously. Dude's got good footwork. He's got a weird style. He's not great athletically. But man, has he learned and expanded his abilities. And he's compensated for that with knowledge and learning and skills that he can then showcase. He throws weird looping punches. He's got a great fucking left. Southpaw, or if he's, traditional, if he's stand, man, he's got good takedown defense. He's got good takedowns, got good grappling, got good guillotine and chokes. Iaquinta is impressive, and I did not give him that credit. And he beat the tar out of Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee beat him up, tried to get him down. There was some exchange there, hurt him, I think, maybe once or twice, got him a little wobbly, a little noodly, because Kevin Lee hits like a shithouse, right? He's got good hands, throws pretty heavy punches, can ground and pound you, can take you down, will definitely choke you out. Had Iaquinta on his back with the figure four, riding the leg lock a lot. Iaquinta's a beast, rode with his hands up so he couldn't put the lock in. I mean, just a fiend. You can see great training, you can see great muscle memory, you can see great cage awareness. An impressive win. And I watched that and I'm like, oh, no wonder Khabib couldn't put him out. This guy's a fiend. And I remember the Khabib fight. Khabib beat him senseless. Khabib he developed a pretty good jab and then some good strikes. He beat Al up bloody, but he couldn't tap him out, couldn't take him out. So, yeah, Iaquinta, and dude, it was a moment. The fifth round, Iaquinta came back at what looked to be a 2-2 tie. They each took a couple of rounds, which it looked about that. Iaquinta came back and pummeled him in the fifth round. Great cardio. Which, dude, Chris Weidman, all those guys have great cardio. Matt Serra, that's the way they train in New York. He came back and pounded Lee in that fifth round. And then when the bell rang at the end of the fifth round, bloody mouth, he stood in front of him and clenched and screamed at him. Ah! And Lee, dude, it's so profound. You can see Lee shrink, shock. Like, what? Fuck, what? How many times have we seen fighters do that? Khabib cranked Conor's face, mounted on his back like a fucking, spider monkey while he ripped his face off. And when they called it, stood up over him and yelled at him. Ah! Or when TJ smoked when Dillashaw smoked Garbrandt for the second fight, knocked the fuck out of it, and Garbrandt stunned. And I don't know, it was the big black guy, whoever was reffing that, waved his hands and TJ stood in front of him and screamed at him. Talk shit, motherfucker. I just dominated you. Dude, Those are stunning moments, and they captured them. And they captured it from behind. The camera was rolling from behind on live TV for Iaquinta when the bell got called in the fifth against Lee. But they also, there's 7 cameras in there. They zoomed in on the front shot. His mouth is bloody. He's beat, and he's covered in sweat, covered in blood, and he screams at Kevin Lee. And you're like, whoa, dude, that's the spirit. That's the warrior spirit. 5 rounds of hell. And the dude just laid waste on you. I brought it. Bum. Talk shit again. That strikes a chord, I think, in me and in most, when you're like, my God. And that's where I sit back and go, do I have that in me? Do I have that in me? Is that part of me? Whoa, those guys are vicious. So that was a great fight, man. I watched that and I was like, wow, 3 fights. You gotta be shitting me. And then you saw Edson Barbosa against Dan Hooker. And Dan Hooker is an up-and-coming Kiwi, a New Zealander. Tall, lanky guy. Good strikes, good kicks. Great kicks. Got a Muay Thai style. Could almost see him in the Muay Thai pants with the splits on the side. Good strikes with his hands. He was destroyed by Edson Barbosa. Edson Barbosa is probably the greatest kicker in the UFC of all time. I put him with a handful of Brazilians, right? Edson Barbosa is the only guy that has a low, a body, and a high kick knockout. Took somebody's knee off, won the fight. Does the spinning back kick into somebody's solar plexus, into their midsection, smoked them, they crumble. And then has that flying wheel kick with the heel to the head, and has multiple knockouts with that. Hit Kevin Lee with one of those. I knocked him wobbly and then finished him. Edson Barbosa is a fucking fiend, will be in the Hall of Fame. He's got a great sinewy body. He's got the mind of an animal. He's got the skills of a cage freak. He went in and crushed. And then, if you watch the fight, it was controversial. There was probably 3 or 4 minutes where they should have called it. And Barbosa was putting a clinic on Dan Hooker, chopping at his gut, chopping at his knee, pounding at his head. And as Daniel Cormier said, the mind wasn't going to go away until the body was. And I would gander that it will take a year or more. There will be rehabilitation. That dude had some serious body trauma to his internal organs, to his knee. He's probably going to need knee rehabilitation. Inside leg, knee, outside leg. Barbosa ruined him. I would be surprised to see Dan Hooker fight again next year and be anything of what he was. That's a career ender, and it's fucking stupid. I can't recall who the referee was, but you gotta end that fight. And now the talk came out, why can't the corner show up and throw the towel in? Rarely. Why don't they protect their fucking fighter? You're getting crushed. Throw the towel over the cage and say, they're done. I'm out. We're out. He can't make a decision. You're killing him. And on one hand, everybody's like, oh, that guy's a bear, brutal. Great fighter. Oh, what a heart. How deep. Dude, you've wrecked that Kiwi's career. And that kid was good. He wasn't great. He was good. And it reminded me of Rory McDonald. Rory McDonald up there with Georges in Montreal, Canada. Rory had that same phenom style and attitude and singular focus. I mean, and then he ran into Robbie Lawler. And those fucking fights, veritably, for all intents and purposes, ended his career. Lawler crushed his nose into his face. You don't recover from that. There's no healing. They don't reconstruct your skull, man. They can. It's never going to be the same. And Rory will fight again. He'll have some fights. Dude, he'll never take shots to his head like he used to. Not that you ever want him to. And that's a failing of whatever their technique is. that they stood there and they didn't go down. I'm not saying you're a coward, but fucking dude. And that's strange, you know, you're telling someone who their mind has to be trained to go to hell. You're going to have to tap me out, knock me out, kill me to win, right? Those are the greatest fighters. And yet you also want them to have some type of self-preservation where they can end the fight, and they're never going to. It's not a switch they can flip. It's on. And Dan Hooker got dismantled by Edson Barboza, and it was a beauty to see. Barboza didn't gas. You saw him pace himself. He threw everything and destroyed this poor guy, and they should have called the fight. And of course he won. And I don't know if he said I'm back or whatever. He's living down here, I think. Down here in Hollywood training with the rest of the crew. I think he relatively moved down here somewhat soon. He followed a striking coach or a BJJ coach down here. His wife is pregnant, so that was awesome to see. I think he's going home. He's going to have a second kid. One of the greats. And those kicks. Good strikes. So that was a brutal fight. An outstanding fight night. Exceptional fight night. For free. And you got the 29th, you got 233 coming up, or 232, whatever it is, with John Jones and Alex Gustafsson, Alexander. So that's going to be sick. That's coming up. I think after the fight, Iaquinta called out Conor, said something like, you know, quit fucking around. I need my shot again at the top guys. Who knows what Conor's going to be. I don't know what the outcome was from the Nevada Athletic Commission. I think Khabib, and I don't know, I haven't investigated it, I need to. I think Khabib got his comeuppance and has a decision. Conor didn't show up, he postponed it. Filed an exception or something like that. But, so, I don't know who fights next for Iaquinta. But that whole Bellator, it was a fight in Hawaii for the veterans. The Friday night fight was, not the Saturday. And they did, and it's Jay Glazier. He sucks. I'm sorry. He's not a good commentator. He doesn't have fluid, smooth conversation. He stutters. He takes brain farts. He seems to be a great guy. He gives back. He's got some kind of organization that's 3 years old that he was celebrating on this with the Bellator owners and managers, with the veterans, where he gives back to veterans. You know, they train, he brings them together, the post-traumatic stress and all of their, you know, disabilities from war. And I'm not saying he's not a good guy. I think he's a great guy. I think he stinks for the sport, which is why he's in this. Dude, it was half-assed. It was a small auditorium. It looked hokey. These clowns. Chael Sonnen's just a jabberbox. And I don't mean to be rude. I watched this thing and I was like, ooh. They did the walk-ins and the wave, where you'd walk up on either side of a dais or a stage and then walk an aisle into the, whatever they call it, the cage. It's not the octagon, of course. The Bellator cage. And that's the competition for the UFC. It did not look good. But, I mean, the fights were okay, and it seems like it's the graveyard for all the has-beens or the angry UFC fighters who aren't getting the respect or the pay. And then it struck me, because they had a little guys fight in there. I think that's what Chandler and Primus are. The lightweights or the flyweights. That's where Demetrius is going. Demetrius Johnson. They're trading Ben Askren for DJ. Dana White did this. And then supposedly there's talk that the entire flyweight division will go away for the men. And I was like, fucking disappointment. I hope they pay DJ millions of dollars. I hope he gets some money and then gets the fuck out. Because it seems like Bellator is a ragtag organization. And I think everyone but the UFC is a ragtag organization. They did some very nice fond farewells for Fox on the Milwaukee fight night. Or maybe not the Milwaukee fight night. Maybe it was the, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. And Karen and Daniel and Tyron and Michael Bisping, and a lot of them gave their memories and their thanks. That was the last televised fight for Fox for 7 years they've been on with the UFC. UFC's now moving over to ESPN. I think they're going to bring a lot of their same commentators. I don't know the commentating staff at ESPN. I've seen a few of them. I don't know if they have boxing or mixed martial arts or martial arts commentating. I would hope they bring a lot of these fighters over. I would hope the contracts are nullified and void from Fox and these guys can move over. There's no other reason, like a Daniel Cormier or a Michael Bisping or a Dominic Cruz or a Tyron Woodley or any of these guys. The ravaging, raging redhead, what's his name? I love him. I don't know why any of the, John Anik, right? Why those guys would not be working for ESPN doing the same thing. They're very good at their craft. I hope they go over. We'll have to see. Dana White's a smart dude. I hope the coverage, I hope that the camera viewability, I hope the presentation is as good on ESPN. I don't think it is. Fox seems to be the premier sporting environment. So concerns on that. But we'll see. I think 229 is, of course, a Zuffa production. That's a pay-per-view. So that's all Zuffa and UFC. But on January 19th, I think there's a Fox fight. Maybe not. Maybe earlier. And it's not Fox anymore. It's going to be ESPN, a free fight. So we'll have to see. And then lastly, Dom Cruz. Dominic said he pulled out of a fight that was lined up for January. He injured his shoulder. He's going to be out another year. He clearly has some kind of genetic, some biological trait where he doesn't have good tendons and ligature because he had multiple knee surgeries and now he's got a shoulder surgery. So I don't know if it's weak or if it's weaker, and when he puts his body on these BJJ grappling and wrestling stresses, things pop and tear. So he's out for another year. He's not going to fight. So I think we're seeing the downhill trend of Dominic Cruz as a fighter, which is okay. He's a great commentator. He's got great visual, mental skill, knowledge in the octagon, can call fights wonderfully, is on par or better than anybody. When he watches with Rogan, it's a great compliment because he actually knows the stuff because that's what he is and that's what he does. So he always compliments some of the generalities that Rogan puts out there. And he reminds me of, like in the football game now, where you've got football players, recent great players who are commentating, like Tony Romo. You watch Tony Romo, and not a Chris Collinsworth, who just is a master of the game, a lifetime in the game, a lifetime out of the game, and knows how the whole game goes. Tony Romo is like you're watching a coach verbalize the game. He knows the play calls, he knows the fun names they use, 45 blast south or 24 hook run, or and not like a coach, like a dude that was making the calls. So when Romo commentates, it's exceptional. You're in the game. I think that's how Dom is. And I sure hope he goes over to ESPN, and I hope he does it and spends a lot of time behind the camera. Doesn't disappear because he's rehabbing and trying to figure out how to be a fighter again. It would be good to keep him in there and, hopefully retire and continue to do this kind of stuff because I think he's exceptional. And he's a smart dude. He's very articulate, speaks fluidly and clearly and smoothly, and has great observational skills and super deep knowledge. And then Vitor Belfort seems to be coming back. Maybe TRT beat Vitor. He should do that over in Bellator. Get back on the juice, man. Over to Bellator and rip somebody's head off. I don't know if he can anymore. Probably kill him. Vitor, he should never come out of retirement, but he has to probably for money, which is unfortunate, which is what these guys down in Brazil do. All around, great stuff from this weekend, man. And keep watching. I think we still have a good end of December coming up for some of the fight game. So enjoy and get in there and do it!